Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Levi Wizz. Today, we're going to be talking about Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo, UFC Vegas 62, because it's going down next Saturday, live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Two of the top strawweights, actually flyweights. We got a former strawweight in Alexa Grasso taking on a former bantamweight in Viviane Araujo. They're meeting at flyweight. They're two of the top contenders. And this should be another exciting matchup. Man, I was talking about it last week. A lot of people were complaining about Zhao Nan versus Dern being a main event. I wasn't one of those people. I told you all that was going to be a good fight, and I'm telling you all right now that this is going to be a good fight as well. The kind of main events you should cry about are the Holly Holm main events. This is not one of them. This will be a good fight. Wizz, how's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. So far, so good. Really excited to be on first time and hopefully for many more.
Absolutely. So listen, this main event between Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo. So Alexa Grasso, she's 14-3, representing Mexico, taking on Viviane Araujo, who's 11-3, representing Brazil. And currently, they got it. Alexa Grasso minus 190. The comeback on Viviane Araujo is plus 160. So I like this fight a lot. And Alexa Grasso, when she first came into the UFC, she had a ton of hype. A lot of people expected big things from her, and she kind of under-delivered at the beginning, but I feel like now she's finally putting it together. I mean, we always knew about the fast hands, the punches and bunches. She's got that Mexican spirit, but there were certain things, for example, she could kind of be out physicaled in there, and I still think she can be. And I think that if Vivi has a path, that is the path to, be, kind of brute her a little bit in there. The thing is, man, you can't sleep on the ground game of Alexa Grasso. Like, I know that she's known for those hands, but in recent fights, you saw that armbar attempt against Carla Esparza. You saw that armbar attempt against Macy Barber. You saw that first round submission against Joanne Wood. I feel like she's rounding out her game. I feel like she's fallen in love with her jiu-jitsu, hence her being a purple belt now, and she's rounding out all areas. And with Vivi, I've always been a fan of hers. I mean, you remember her debut when she went out there, landed a vicious one-punch knockout, which you don't often see in the women's divisions. She's got nice footwork. She's very physical, like I already mentioned. She can take people down, and she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So this should be quite the intriguing main event here, man.
Yeah, definitely. The way I see things going, I expect Viviane Araujo to probably win round one here with that cage pressure, with the wrestling and takedown attempts. She might even win round two as well. My issue with Araujo here is that she's shown in the past that she tends to gas out, and Grasso just continues to pick up pace. Grasso's gas tank is pretty good for the division, and her striking pace is going to be a little bit too much in those later rounds for Araujo if she does gas out. I know in her last fight, the gas tank did hold up, but I do see Grasso picking up the striking, just putting on a pace towards the end of that second round, going into the later rounds, and taking over the fight from there.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to where this fight takes place. I think in space, you have to favor Alexa Grasso. Much faster hands, much cleaner. And it's not a foregone conclusion that Vivi is going to win this on the mat, because I definitely think that Alexa is no slouch there either. I just think it's more so for Vivi to win this fight, she has to neutralize Alexa Grasso. And you did bring up a good point that this is one of those fights you got to take round by round. And we got to take into consideration that there's 5 rounds to work here. So kind of like the Dern and Zhao Nan fight, every single round counted so goddamn much on those scorecards. Like there were some rounds that went to Zhao Nan, some rounds that went to Dern. Were the Dern rounds 10-8? Were they not? A bunch of stuff to ponder, but every single round counts for a lot in this specific fight. And you look at Vivi's last fight against Andrea Lee. So it was mostly dominant, but there were some things like in the early going, she actually got dropped. And it's not necessarily that I'm questioning her chin. It's just more so that with her approach, kind of being a bit of a brute, kind of being a bit of a juggernaut, those fast hands of Alexa Grasso, those sharp counters will be there. So on the outside, if I have a Vivi ticket, that's where I'm going to be kind of concerned. But Vivi gets this against the fence, that's where I think she can do her work. That's where I think she can kill minutes off the clock, land those knees to the thigh. And if she can mix in a takedown or two, I'm not necessarily sitting here saying that she's going to pass guard. I'm not saying that she's going to come out here and submit Alexa Grasso. But what I am saying is that her best path to victory is to get that top control, ride out a couple minutes, let the judges favor that over what happens on the feet. It's just on the feet, how far away is Alexa going to pull? That's kind of how far is she going to pull away? That's kind of what I'm, having an issue deciphering here, like in terms of, is there value at minus 190? So I actually am leaning Alexa Grasso for a pick. But when I saw the plus 170 on Vivi, I was like, man, should I just throw a unit on there and see? Because I definitely think she can win rounds in this fight. And I think there's a path there. It's just I need specific things to happen in order for her to execute that. Like if she's standing and banging with Alexa Grasso, I'm going to be really pissed off. Whereas if she's neutralizing her against the fence, she's mixing in those takedowns, riding out some top control, that's where I think, she might be live at plus 170. It's just, can I trust her to do that? And you take it a step further, Alexa Grasso has gotten a lot better defensively, and she's gotten better at getting back up to her feet too, Wiz.
Yeah, 100%. And touching on a point that you mentioned earlier, Alexa Grasso's grappling has been pretty impressive over the past couple of fights. I don't think she's going to be a slouch on the floor. I think she might be able to reverse Araujo as she does leave herself exposed in some of the positions she puts herself in. On the money line side, it's so tough because on one side, I feel like it's lined somewhat correctly with Grasso having that such a huge advantage on the feet, and she can hold her own on the mat. But do I want to take the dog shot on Araujo, who tends to gas out in some of her fights, but also has that strong wrestling and brute advantage just of going forward and pressuring? I really like fighters that do pressure and that do have that advantage, but paired with the gas tank. So for me, it's a stay away. I predict Grasso via unanimous decision, but anything can happen, man.
And to your credit, with that pace of Vivi kind of slowing down in the later rounds, I don't think that she's not out here running her miles. I definitely think she's in shape. It's just she fights at a high pace, and just naturally that's going to slow you down. So had this been a 3-round fight, then I probably would have already taken the plus 170. 5 rounds makes it a little different, but to make a little devil's advocate here, in that 3rd round against Macy Barber, Alexa slowed down as well. And it wasn't even about necessarily Alexa gassing or anything like that. It was more so like Macy was down 2 and she kind of had to say, fuck it. And you saw her just putting her head down and slugging some big bombs, and kind of not even the takedown technique wasn't even that great. It was just more so she just went for it. She just kind of brooded it a little bit. And that's kind of what Vivi needs to do here. It's just that winning 1 round is not enough. You need to win at least 3 rounds to cash this ticket. And when we talk like this, we're assuming that there's not a finish along the way, right? We're just playing it in terms of, let's say it goes the 5-round distance, which most fights in this weight class tend to do. So that's what makes it interesting here. So do I think Viviane can win 3 rounds or not? Possibly, depending on her strategy and if she's able to implement the exact things that need to happen here to neutralize Alexa Grasso. So that's what makes it tough. I lean Alexa though, but I'm not going to play her money line. If I'm going to play anything, it will be a 1-unit shot on Vivi in hopes that we can get 3 rounds with top control or pin her up against the fence. But not one of my more convicted plays on this card. And I mean, it's not a play. I haven't bet anything, but I do have 3 bets that we're going to talk about here on the upcoming card, on the upcoming fights. Anything else you have to say about this one?
No, not at all. It's a very tough matchup because there's a lot that can happen in the fight that can change the outcome. And I'm feeling the same way. I won't have any bets on this fight.
All right, well, co-main event of the evening in the bantamweight division, we got Jonathan Martinez. He's 16-4, welcoming the legend Cub Swanson, who's 28-12, to the bantamweight division. Kind of interesting. Currently, they got it. Jonathan Martinez minus 180. The comeback on Cub Swanson is plus 155. I like this fight a lot for a variety of reasons, and there's lots of talking points. I think that at featherweight, I might actually be all over Cub Swanson at these odds. And I'm not even sitting here saying that he's not going to win at bantamweight. It's just, historically speaking, when you got kind of a bit of an aging fighter, I think he turns 39 in November, drop in a weight class, especially I didn't think that those cuts to 45 were necessarily easy for Cub either. So now to bantamweight, but I did kind of say similar things about the great Jose Aldo, and then he looked amazing at bantamweight. But they're two completely different fighters. But just saying, I've been wrong about certain guys dropping in the past, but I am kind of questioning it. Like, this guy was talking about retirement a few years ago. Now he's dropping to bantamweight. It's a completely different speed with the 135ers. But how they match up stylistically, I think each guy is strong where the other guy is weak. I expect this to be a stand-up fight, and Jonathan Martinez, kind of the long, rangy guy with the nice kicks to the body, the front kicks. And I've always kind of criticized his boxing a little bit, even though it has gotten better. I got to give him credit. It's gotten a lot better, but I still think that that's a weakness compared to his kicks, compared to that beautiful step-through knee, that check knee that he's caught a lot of people inside the UFC's octagon with. And then with Cub Swanson, we know he's always had those fast, explosive hands in the featherweight division. Now I want to see how they translate at bantamweight. Jonathan Martinez, he's been caught in a lot of fights, man. I mean, that debut against Cirkunov got dropped twice. The knockout loss to Davey. And then also most recently to Alejandro Perez got dropped in that fight as well. So his chin has been checked before, and Cub Swanson can check chins as well. It's just, how do you expect the legend to look at bantamweight, this far down in his career?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect, because for me, when I'm handicapping fights and I see an aging fighter moving down a division, it's an I hate saying it, but it's an automatic fade, because moving down to a division that late in your career is just so much more tough to adapt to, because they're usually not going to be able to keep up with the speed. And I'm not saying Cub Swanson can't do that, because he has some fast hands himself. But against someone like Jonathan Martinez, it's going to be a little bit tough, because Jonathan has historically thrown more volume than Cub Swanson. Swanson, I know he's coming off of a KO victory of Darren Elkins. Could be motivated to try and make a run at this division. I don't think he's going to have the same result with the KO here. Martinez has some defensive liabilities on the feet, but I do like his head movement and overall distance management when it comes to the striking. He just tends to, when he's throwing that lead kick, he kind of leaves his head hanging there, which is where he usually gets clipped. And I was on him in the Alejandro Perez fight, and I was scared in that first round, and he got dropped. He got saved by the bell. I'll just say how it is. And to me, if Cub wants to win this fight, he has to make it a war. His volume won't be enough to match pace with Jonathan Martinez. He's going to have to pressure him constantly throughout the fight and just make it an absolute dogfight, just enough to keep up with him. And power aspect, we're not going to be able to tell who has the power advantage here, just because it's going to be Cub's first fight at bantamweight. If it was at featherweight, it would be a different story. Prediction is Martinez unanimous decision here. I just think he can outpoint him. It's going to be a 3-round kickboxing match. I don't think any of the guys are going to try and bring it to the mat at all. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious to see how Jonathan reacts to some of these shots. I mean, like we talked about how, okay, well, Cub is dropping the bantamweight, and at that age, historically speaking, it's a red flag. But I kind of view Jonathan Martinez as a guy who he's going to end his career at featherweight. I think that some of these cuts for him have been tough to bantamweight. And like you've seen with his chin getting touched multiple times, he's been dropped, 4 times in his bantamweight run. Like, is that because he's chinny, or is that because these weight cuts, doesn't have enough water in his brain to take these shots? I'm curious, because one thing we know about Cub Swanson is the man can crack. And I'm curious to see how Jonathan Martinez responds to these shots. And on the flip side of things, Cub Swanson has had multiple broken jaws. One of those step through knees that Jonathan Martinez lands, one of those head kicks, that might break that jaw again. And when you're kind of at the tail end of your career, that's where you're more willing to, you eat that knee, and maybe we just call it a night. Maybe we just let him land a couple ground and pound shots, let the ref intervene, live to fight another day. So I think if it's a gritty kind of who wants it more kind of fight, I think Jonathan Martinez wins that. But I can't discount the KO threat from Cub here. Like I said, Martinez has been dropped 4 times. Cub has knocked out an infinite amount of people throughout his career. I mean, dating back to the WEC days, man. So, I mean, he's knocked out the current UFC lightweight champion, Charles do Bronx Oliveira, with 1 punch. I know you remember that.
Yep.
So, and it was a delayed reaction shot too. And the power still carries over. Now, you mentioned the Elkins fight, which I'm glad you did, because on the positive side of things, it's like, well, Cub still at this age still carries that power, still has that speed. They say power is the last thing to go, but on the flip side, Elkins is way slower than a guy like Jonathan Martinez is, also towards the latter part of his career, whereas Jonathan Martinez, you could make the argument, is just getting started. I mean, the kid was born in 1994. You could say that he's just getting his feet wet inside the octagon. His last fight, I think he asked for Frankie Edgar. I feel like that's the stage he's at now. He's asking for legends. He's got like about 10 UFC fights under his belt, starting to feel like he's making a name for himself. And the thing about Swanson is, when I bet Burgos against Swanson, that was supposed to kind of be like a coming out party, kind of like this is supposed to be for Jonathan Martinez. And man, obviously every fighter is different, but let me tell you what, Cub Swanson did not go down without a fight, man. Like Cub Swanson, like I was expecting Burgos, we're going to touch this guy up in the first round and get out of there. And man, like it was a split decision. I think one judge even had it 30-27 Swanson. Look, new weight class, new opponent. I completely get that, but I'm just not counting out Cub Swanson to the point where I want to bet Martinez. Martinez is my pick, but I don't have a bet on this one. Anything else to add?
Yeah, the KO power of Swanson, yeah, we can't discount it. It's always live there. So I'm interested to see what the number is on Swanson KO, just or finish only. That's interesting to me, but no other bet on this fight for me.
I mean, the good news is, Swanson is plus 155. So if you're picking him and you don't want to get cute, because you never know how these fights are going to go, just take the underdog if you're picking him outright. But yeah, I feel you. KO only, that means that any other outcome besides him getting KO'd is a push, right?
Yep.
The thing is, though, one of those knees from Jonathan Martinez might ruin that. So
That's
yeah,
true.
it's going to be interesting. So featured bout in the flyweight division, we got two top contenders, because we got Askarov. He's 14-1-1, representing Russia, taking on Brandon Raw Dog Royval, who is 14-6, representing the USA. And currently, they got it. Askarov minus 215. The comeback on Brandon Raw Dog Royval is plus 185. I think this is another fantastic matchup, man. I think that, how can you not be a fan of Raw Dog? This is a guy that's just active the entire fight, is going to make you work. Even off his back, he's working. And he had that fight in, I think it was his final LFA fight. It was like that 20-second fight where he just runs at the guy, flying knees him, then submits him right away. And then you see that translate to UFC victories. I mean, he's out here spinning, dropping Kai Kara France and choking him out. Like, he's out here doing it to real guys. So you got to respect it. It's just with this guy, Askarov, obviously him being Russian, he fights like a lot of Russians, kind of has that Russian coast style going on, where on one hand, it's nice that he can neutralize fighters, kill minutes off the clock. On the other hand, when that style bites you in the ass, it's when the other guy is off his back, landing more elbows. So it's like, what does the judge, what do the judges favor more? Do they favor the guy that's on top neutralizing, or do they favor the guy that's on bottom actually landing strikes, actually scrambling, actually throwing up submission attempts? So this one, I actually think it's going to come down to who's judging this fight. It could be 30-27 Askarov. It could be 29-28 either side. It could be, so I see this being an interesting fight.
Yeah, in this fight, Royval has the measurables advantage here. He has the reach and height advantage. I have a couple issues with Royval. He tends to fight without his brain sometimes.
He's wild.
He's wild. He's wild, which puts him in some really bad positions. But the man can scramble out of anything. He's proven it time and time again. The issue with Askarov is where he finds his biggest strength in the wrestling is also where Royval loves the fight to be. He loves it to be on the ground. He loves the scrambles. He likes getting those subs. Really good jiu-jitsu. Great grappler. And if the fight was on the feet, I would favor Askar a little bit more, but I do think this fight will more than likely be on the mat for longer periods of time. And part of me is looking at this tape. I think Royval has more than a dog shot here. The line is a little bit wide, in my opinion. I think Royval could get to his back and sprawl. These scrambles are probably going to be a little bit disadvantageous for Askar. we've seen how he dealt with the speed disadvantage against Kai Kara-France just in the boxing aspect. When he got pressured, he did not look too comfortable. And I do think that Royval can just wreak havoc in that freaking octagon and find his way to submission here. Um, Either fighter, I could see them winning 29-28 decision here, but a poke at that Royval sub only or finish only line is live because I think the guy is gritty. He can fight out of anything. He can scramble out of any position, and I just don't think Askar has fought anyone with such ability to scramble. So it's a toss up for me, and a dog shot on Royval is not a bad idea here.
I don't disagree, but I will say this though. Askarov has fought very good grapplers. Brandon Moreno can grapple. Tim Elliott, even though he's a gasser, he can still wrestle. Alexandre Pantoja can grapple. Benavides can grapple. So I mean, I definitely think that Askarov's been in there with some serious guys. It's just there's only one raw dog, and I agree with you. He's definitely just a very unique scrambler. He's a guy that can give up 8 takedowns in a fight like he did against Bontarin and still go out there and win the fight, right? So that's what makes him kind of unique. It's just that with Askarov's style of, kind of doing that Russian coast, that means that he's going to have to neutralize Royval to where Royval can't be getting off on those scrambles, where Royval can't be throwing up those submission attempts. And if he does, Askarov's got to pass. Askarov's got to find a way to get to that dominant position, get to side control and kind of tame him a bit, tame the mutt. Can he do that? That's the big question. So, and again, we're also talking in terms of if there's no finish, right? Because there could be a finish, and I would actually lean more towards Royval getting the finish. But let me say this, and that's assuming that, if anyone got a finish, I'd say Royval would be more likely to. But let's not forget about that fight when Askarov knocked out Tim Elliott midair, and then Tim Elliott woke up before he hit the mat or something. You saw him go limp and then just wake up mid knockout. So I think Askarov's got some underrated pop on his punches as well. I think he kind of fucked up in that last fight against Kai Kara-France, man. I think that he got a bit carried away. Basically it was back to what do the judges favor more? Do they favor a bit more activity, or do they favor you kind of riding out, a couple rounds on top and quote unquote stalling, right? So it's tough to know who's going to be judging this fight and what they're going to be appreciating. So I do see the case for if one guy's going to be more dominant than the other. I think that would be Askarov. It's just, is he going to be more dominant, or is he going to allow, Royval to get off on these scrambles, to woo the judges with, his flashy moves and stuff like that. So hopefully Askarov learned from his mistakes last time. And with that said, back to the talk about who's more likely to get a finish. We can't forget, though, that Royval did get dropped that last fight against Schnell, and Royval also has been, finished more than once inside the octagon. So, even though Askarov hasn't finished anyone yet, Royval has been finished more than once inside the octagon. So and he's been dropped in other fights as well. So, yeah, and that's just credit to his style, in giving, in going for all those crazy scrambles and going for all those big moves, the submission attempts, the flying knees, the spins, this and that. You're going to leave yourself open. It's a very risky style, but he makes it work. To be top 5 in a division like that, where, as the weight classes go lower, the guys get more technical. You guys remember Demetrius Johnson was the champion in that weight class for a very long time. And one thing that he did so great was he was just amazing in every single realm of mixed martial arts. So to be at the top of the heap in the flyweight division, where these guys might not be big, but these guys are good in every single area of the fight, that speaks volumes that he makes that style work. So I respect it, and as a fan, I like watching him more than I like Askarov, but I got to go with Askarov as the pick here. I'm not going to bet him. I'm not crazy about the line, but Askarov's my pick. I think he can win 2 of these rounds.
Yeah. At first, I was leaning the Askarov side, but looking at the line, it was just a little too wide for me. But I have no bets on this fight as of right now. I will look into the finish only for Royval, though.
Now, next up, I do have a bet on this fight because next up in the middleweight division, we got Dusko Todorovic. He's 11-3, representing Serbia. He's taking on the Beverly Hills Ninja Jordan Wright, who is 12-3, but he's actually 12-4 because Anthony Fluffy Hernandez did indeed knock him out on Contender Series, but he was smoking the devil's lettuce, so they overturned it. And currently, they got it Dusko Todorovic. It says Todorovir on Best Fight Odds. If Todorovir shows up and it's not Todorovic, it might be a max bet. But
Yeah.
currently they got a minus 190. Todorovic, the comeback on Wright is plus 160. I took Todorovic minus 189 earlier in the week. Listen, I know that Todorovic has his flaws. I'm very aware of that. You know, the guy fights with his hands down, fights with his chin up. He's very confident in his head movement. And I still think he's a skilled guy, though. I think he's got good speed. I think that he's able to mix in takedowns. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I just think that, you know, when you're talking about the top 15, it's going to be kind of tough to get away with certain things. But when you're, you know, not even a top 115 guy like Jordan Wright, I think that these are the kind of guys that Dusko can style on. This is the kind of guy where you can get away with fighting with your hands down and your chin up and you know, look pretty out there. Do your thing. Because Jordan Wright, you know, he's just a kind of a front-loaded bully, you know. If he can go out there and blitz you real quick, you know, because he does have some good techniques. You know, he trains under Anthony Hardonk, who former kickboxer, former UFC fighter. So definitely, like, Jordan Wright's going to be throwing hard early. But as long as Dusko can survive any kind of early blitz, if we're talking about who's got more fight in them, I mean, it's night and day who's got more fight in them between Dusko and Jordan Wright. I don't think that Jordan Wright has much fight in him. And to take a step further, I don't think Jordan Wright's got much chin in him either. I mean, point in case, that last fight against Barriol, he got cracked one time. Immediately, Jordan Wright, who's known for being a kickboxer, was in wrestling mode against Barriol. And Barriol, who's never submitted anybody ever before, gets his first ever submission win against Jordan Wright. So I just think that guys on this level, like Dusko, like the Bruno Silvas, like the Barriol, it's kind of mid-tier, kind of right outside the top 25. I think that those are the guys that are going to style on Jordan Wright and go out there and finish him. You know, if you're truly bottom of the barrel, like Jamie Pickett, like Ike Villanueva, no disrespect to them, I'm just saying for UFC standards. I know I'm very aware that they'd fucking kill me, but I'm saying at the UFC level, if you're bottom of the barrel, like, that's where maybe Jordan Wright can kind of scrape away. But like, I just think that outside from like a head kick knockout or something, I mean, I really think that Dusko's head movement is going to look good in this fight. I think that Dusko is going to be able to come out here and have that well-rounded performance, knock him out on the feet, mix in takedowns, pound him out, submit him, like, do whatever you want. This is your showcase fight. You paid your dues. You went 3 hard rounds with RoboCop, which one doesn't simply do. You saw what RoboCop did to Julian Marquez. You saw what RoboCop just did to Chitty. The Chitty fight was competitive until he caught an elbow to the temple. Listen, a nice elbow to the temple is going to knock anybody out. The Puna Haley Soriano fight, Puna Haley's one of the hardest hitters in the division, and Dusko wasn't even really out. He was still trying to fight, man. So, whereas when Jordan Wright gets knocked out, I mean, they got to bring in the smelling salts. They got to bring in the stretcher. They got to bring in the flashlight in his eyes. It gets pretty scary in there, man. And it's happened multiple times, and he's been out cold, man. And I think at this point, his confidence has to be shot. He already doesn't believe in his chin. So now he's trying to resort to wrestling, and he's getting submitted by guys that aren't known for being a submission artist. So I think that this is a spot where Dushko's going to come out here, get a finish, keep his spot on the roster, and this might be the last time we see the Beverly Hills Ninja. So I took Dusko straight, and I think he finishes this guy.
Yeah, this fight ends in chaos. Like, how can you not expect this? Jordan Wright is the definition of like a kill or be killed fighter. A very opportunistic finisher, but gets finished a lot himself. I think what's going to set the tone here is Dusko's takedowns. I think it's going to be the most effective in the fight. And if he's able to get it on the mat, he's just going to win via ground and pound or submission here quite easily. I agree. I think Dusko is a side here. I personally have a bet on the under 1.5. I got it early at minus 140. So I have 2.8 units on that. And yeah, I think this fight finishes in the first round. Dusko is ahead of Jordan. I don't think Jordan Wright should even be in the UFC anymore. But I think the wrestling is going to be a little bit too much for Jordan Wright in that first round. and he's just gonna get. I think submission is the more likely method of victory here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dushka, you paid your dues, kid. You crushed the grapes. Now we drink the wine.
Mhm.
So I think he's gonna come out here, finish this guy, put a stamp on it, and get back in the win column. And then hopefully we can build him up. But if not, I guess it's back to fighting the RoboCops and maybe a Dricus Duplessis, some tough matchups. Because I mean, the dude's been in there with killers, so it's nice that they're giving him, like, you saw what happened when they gave him a nice little step down with Maki Pitolo, who I actually think is way better than Jordan Wright. Took care of business. You saw what happened when they gave him that step down against Dequan Townsend. I mean, that ground and pound was vicious. When Dushko gets that step down, he shines. I think he shines next Saturday. So let's go, Dushko. Now, kicking off the main card, we got a matchup between the vet, the Haitian sensation, Neil Magny. He's 26-9, taking on Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez, who is 17-2. Currently, they got it Neil Magny minus 125. The comeback on Daniel Rodriguez is plus 105. So this is my second bet of the night. So I took D-Rod at plus 105. I put 1.5 units on it. So I've had a hit and miss history with Neil Magny, because, man, he's been in the UFC a long ass time. Those last few fights, the Tony Martin, the Li Jingliang, the Robbie Lawler, I got all those wrong. Prior to that, I bet Santiago Ponzinibbio big against Neil Magny. I bet Neil Magny against Hector Lombard back in the day, against Johnny Hendricks too. So I've had mixed results with Neil Magny, but basically Neil Magny is one of these guys that super long for the weight class, longest reach in the history of the welterweight division, knows how to use that reach. And it's just one of these guys that you start to gas out against a guy like Neil Magny, and he's really good at pushing the pace. But more importantly than that, he's really good at getting guys to fight his game. Sometimes guys, for whatever reason, they abandon their game plans and they start trying to grapple with Neil Magny. I think it's something about that range. Like you saw those 3 fights in a row I mentioned, the Tony Martin, the Li Jingliang, the Robbie Lawler fight. Like, these guys are known for their striking. These guys were out here trying to wrestle him, which was uncharacteristic, and they gassed themselves out trying to wrestle him. The thing I like about Daniel Rodriguez is that he can carry his output throughout the 3 rounds. He gets better as the fight progresses. I've never seen cardio to be an issue with Daniel Rodriguez. And a lot of these guys get off to good starts against Neil Magny, but they fade down the stretch. For example, the Max Griffin fight. Max Griffin dropped Neil Magny badly in that first round, but Max Griffin kind of got carried away. Max Griffin kind of blew his load a little bit, whereas Daniel Rodriguez kind of keeps things sharp, kind of pops his jab out there. And what's interesting is he's going to have like a 6-inch reach disadvantage in this spot. But I actually think for MMA terms that Daniel Rodriguez has some of the better boxing in the welterweight division, just in terms of how clean his hands are. And it might not look the most spectacular, but he's always working. He's always doing something. He's always popping that jab. Now he's starting to mix in his leg kicks a bit more. I don't think that he's going to act uncharacteristic and just come out here and start to tie up Neil Magny against the fence, where guys historically start to gas, and that's where Neil Magny can get off on his body lock takedowns and this and that, and start to make it seem like he's working a lot harder than his opponent. I think that D-Rod can kind of shut Neil Magny down, and that's what I'm hoping he does, assuming he follows the right game plan and doesn't get lured into the bullshit that Magny makes people do. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy how you see Robbie Lawler, one of the most prolific knockout artists in the history of the sport, turn into a wrestler. Li Jingliang, one of the most prolific knockout artists in the history of the welterweight division, turns into a wrestler. Like Tony Martin. Now, in the Tony Martin fight, you got to give Neil Magny credit, because Tony Martin, known for those calf kicks, Neil Magny comes out southpaw in that fight, and he's the one throwing calf kicks. That was a very, very vet tactic there. That, like, I was like, yo, that's some in-fight adjustment type shit. I respect that a lot. But here against D-Rod, I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think D-Rod's going to be popping that jab. I think he's going to be slightly ahead on points, possibly catch him with something big. I think that Neil Magny's chin has been tested throughout the years, and he's been knocked out more than once. He's been rocked in other fights. And you look at the resume, oh, you beat Jeff Neal, but like, Jeff Neal almost died a few months prior. And if you watch that fight, Jeff Neal did not fight like Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal did the same bullshit these other guys were doing. Jeff Neal abandoned his fast hands and tried to make it a wrestling match. I'm like, dude, and he gasses out 2 minutes in. I was like, oh my God, Jeff. Like, if you gave me the Jeff that just fought Luke, I'll bet Jeff in that spot. But back to this. D-Rod, let's just follow the right game plan here. Just fight like you normally fight, and I think he wins. And at dog odds, I'm willing to find out. So I took the plus 105 dog odds on D-Rod.
Yeah, it looks like we're both on the same side here. Um, yeah, Magny does have that 6-inch reach advantage. Uh, I think D-Rod can get into that pocket and really pop out that jab. Uh, the only fear is in this fight, it could go two ways. That 6-inch reach advantage is going to be really key because if D-Rod's able to get in close and not give up like these clinch positions that Magny's able to lure people in with, then he should be able to coast a 30-27. But what happens in Magny fights is people try to close in the distance and they start getting pushed against the cage and they start getting grinded out. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Um, I do think Magny is starting to regress just a little bit. I could tell by the last fight. Also, I mean, in the Max Griffin fight, he didn't look like himself. I was surprised that he got the victory. I was happy he got the victory because I was on the Magny side, but that was a little scary to say the least.
He didn't look no minus 275 or whatever his line was. Let's put it that
No,
way.
not at all. Not at all. So I haven't been really impressed with him at all. And I'm also interested to see how D-Rod shows up to the scales because we do know that he showed up 10 pounds heavier on the last weight cut. So
But
let's see.
let's just clarify, not because he missed, because it was supposed to be a catch weight with Kevin Holland.
Yeah. So that was supposed to be a catch weight, but it was caused by him not being able to cut down. That was the main issue in that.
Oh, really? Is that true?
Yeah, he wasn't able
Interesting.
to cut all the way down to 170. So I'm interested to see how he looks right now in this weight cut. I think he does have the better boxing in this fight as long as he's able to stay on the outside and like smartly close distance and not end up in these clinch situations where Magny shines most. Uh, he'll be able to outvolume him and win a decision here. I would be surprised if it's a KO, to be honest. I'm sticking to D-Rod decision as the prediction. And yeah, I have him at plus 105 as well. I have to check my number, but yeah, plus 105. I have him for a unit.
Now, main event of the prelims in the light heavyweight division, we got Misha Cirkunov. He's 15-8, taking on Alonzo Menifield, who is 12-3. Currently, they got it. Alonzo Menifield minus 210. The comeback on Misha Cirkunov is plus 180. So this one's interesting to me, man, because a lot of people know some of my main strategies include, betting on the guys that can just shoot takedown after takedown after takedown without getting tired. That's one of my angles. Another one of my angles is, I love fading these guys that are on their way out. I love fading these frauds. And I love doing it against, these young, hungry prospects. So I always look at a card going into it. I'm always like, who doesn't belong? Who's one or two fights away from retirement? Who's a stunt puller? Who do I have a good history fading? And Misha Cirkunov is one of those guys. The thing is, my man, and I bet on Wellington Turman that last fight, but I think I had it at even plus 100 or minus 105, something like good odds. Can I trust Alonzo Menifield at minus 210? That's because I love fading Misha Cirkunov, especially at this point in his career and historically speaking. Johnny Walker, that was a great bet back in the day. And I've also had my points where it's costed me, the Krylov fight. I mean, it's funny because back in the day, Cirkunov beat Krylov. He beat Kutalaba. He's got one other really good win. Do you remember what it is off the top of your head? He beat one of those guys that is now doing well. Let me see. He's got three. Jimmy Crute. Yeah, I bet on Jimmy Crute in that fight too. I was wrong about that. So I mean, at this guy's best, I think skill-wise that Cirkunov's actually good. It's just you put Cirkunov in that one bad spot. You hit Cirkunov properly. Cirkunov's not the kind of guy that really overcomes adversity. And that's one thing that I've loved capitalizing on at the betting window. My issue is, can I really trust Alonzo at a price like this? I lean Alonzo, and I'm going to pick Alonzo. It's just minus 210. There's been stunts pulled against Devin Clark, against William Knight. There's been a lot of stunts pulled along the way by Alonzo. Is he finally at a point now where we've kind of patched it up a little bit? Because I know he fought the guy that you just interviewed, interestingly enough. And, that went the way that a lot of people expected. But despite Cirkunov's shortcomings, he's still a proven UFC guy that's beaten legit competition. What do you think? Can I trust Alonzo at a price like this?
It's tough. It's tough because if you look at the last fight against Mozarov, the line was pretty similar, and I don't know why it should be similar in this case when you're facing legit UFC competition in Cirkunov, who's proven that he can grapple and can get these submissions against legit guys. Um, my issue with Cirkunov is he has a horrible gas tank. Like he'll go for these takedowns, but after round one, you'll see him wilting. Like
Oh yeah.
he is panting on the stool. He barely is able to get up. So do I really want to trust either fighter in this situation? Probably not. If you're gonna put a point a gun to my head and ask me who am I picking, and it's gonna be Alonzo Menifield, that's for sure. I think he has the cleaner boxing, way more power, and I think he's gonna be able to shut the lights off here. But in terms of a betting aspect, I'm not touching this line at minus 210 because anything can happen. What if Cirkunov is able to land that first takedown? I think Alonzo's kind of like a fish out of water on the mat for the most part, especially against these guys that are able to lock in these weird submissions like Cirkunov. I definitely think that he's able to get him in the first round, but after the first, it's going to be Alonzo all the way.
Yeah, and my thing is like, so like I think that if Cirkunov gets embarrassed in this fight and gets finished, I think he probably retires. Like, how many more times can you keep taking these ass whoopings, keep breaking in fights, keep getting knocked out, this and that? Like, I think he's 1 or 2 fights away from retirement for sure. So it's gonna piss me off when Alonzo knocks him out in the first exchange, and that minus 210 does look like value, and then I never get a chance to fade Misha Cirkunov ever again. But to your point, when Cirkunov still has skills. I mean, that necktie he hit on Jimmy Crute, that guillotine he hit on Krylov, that blast double, like he's still got skills. Another interesting little caveat, and I guess this is more narrative, but it's also facts. Alonzo Menifield's camp has experience with Cirkunov. Ryan Spann, that's one of their guys. Ryan Spann ran through Cirkunov. And yeah, Ryan Spann and Menifield are two different human beings. But my point is that Coach Saif Saud already has the blueprint on how to beat this guy. He's already researched him for multiple hours on a different training camp. Now he's coming back and is going to mold this other pupil of his to go out there and beat someone that they've already, passed the test with an A+ with in the past. So they know exactly what to expect from Cirkunov. There's not going to be any surprises here. It's just, with that being said, you might know that something's coming, but can you still stop it, right? Like, that blast double is coming, but can you stop it? Like, that's the thing. Anytime people would fight Khabib, you know exactly what he's going to do, but no motherfuckers could stop it. And guys, no, I'm not comparing Cirkunov to Khabib at all. Cirkunov's a guy I like fading. I'm just saying that we know exactly what Cirkunov wants to do. Menifield and his coach, Saif Saud, know exactly what Cirkunov wants to do. But does that mean that they can stop it? And I do think that Alonzo actually has a little bit underrated takedown defense. The kind of issues I've had is he's a little bit, I don't want to call him more of an athlete than a fighter, because I do think he's overcome some really tough spots in fights. Like, he got rocked badly against William Knight, and I didn't see any quit in him. And I think his takedown defense actually is underrated. It's just that, with a big guy with those muscles, as he starts to fatigue, if he finally gives up one takedown after fighting off the first 7, then it might be kind of hard for him to get back up. But I don't think that he's just going to be, giving up position or giving up full mount or this or that, or give his neck up easily. So yeah, my pick is Alonzo Menifield here. It's just, does Cirkunov have one more in him in the tank? That's my question, because we're talking minus 210. We're not talking pick 'em odds. Pick 'em odds, I would have already betted Alonzo Menifield. Minus 150, I would have already bet Alonzo Menifield, right? It's just minus 210. I need a little more insurance, right? It's just going to really piss me off when I pass on Alonzo. He knocks him out in the first round. Misha retires, and I never get a chance to fade him again. So that's kind of where my head's at on that one.
Yeah, see, if you wanted to take the Alonzo side here, I would look for the Alonzo inside the distance. You'll probably get close to the minus 120, minus 130 area, just from what I'm expecting. I haven't looked into the lines. I don't think they've even dropped yet. Um, I do think if he does win, it's going to be inside the distance 90% of the time, whether it's a knockout in the first round, the second, or the third. Uh, I don't see him winning a decision just because I don't think Cirkunov is going to be able to move after the second round. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to be looking into personally.
I feel you on that. I'm not much of a prop guy, but I mean, I feel you. I think that, there is a good chance that he finishes the fight. But my other thing is, if it goes the distance, I would expect Alonzo to be the winner there too, because like you said, Cirkunov fades. But if Cirkunov can use some vet tactics, kind of run away a bit and minimize damage, and maybe Alonzo starts gassing out too, but Alonzo just kind of lands a bit more leg kicks, maybe a couple more strikes, but can't get him out of there. I think that Alonzo wins that decision as well. So that's what makes it tough for me there. But yeah, I mean, I got Alonzo. It's just I need to make a decision if do I truly think there's value on these odds? That's really it. If it was just about, I know people love to talk about just pick the winner. I wish it was that you can only pick the winner if you actually only pick winners. But in this game, you never know what's going to happen. Like in that Zhao Nan fight, I'm not an idiot. I knew that if Dern gets on top of her, there's a good chance that we get submitted. And that's just the bottom line. But at plus 235 odds, I was willing to find out. I thought that there was value on those odds. Now, if you flip the odds around and you make Zhao Nan, minus 300 in that spot, I wasn't going to bet her. I would have maybe considered betting Dern, right? Because it's all about assessing, how close do you think this fight has the potential of being, and is there value on the odds? Like Bo Nickel minus 1800. Yeah, I think he's going to win this fight. But if it was just about picking winners, then why don't I lay 18 units to win one on Bo Nickel? Because the risk is just way too high. But that doesn't mean there's value on Pickett, because I think Pickett's going to get blown out the water. I'm not going to bet on Pickett. So it's not like I'm just throwing around, money just because, oh my God, this guy's got a plus next to his name. Now I'm going to bet him. Like, hell no, I don't think Pickett's going to win, but I don't really want to bet 18 to win one on on Bo Nickel. But back to this, minus 210. For him to cover that price tag, he's got to just make this guy quit in the first round, which he's done plenty of times. It's just, I know Alonzo gets extended, and you mix in that Misha, despite being a front runner, despite being a bully, despite not being the toughest, he's got skills. And you can't deny that. So that's where I'm having kind of like the inner turmoil of if I want to bet that or not. But as of now, I have not. But my pick is Alonzo Menifield. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, I will have a bet on this fight. We got Mana Martinez. He's 9-3, taking on Brandon Davis, who is 14-9. Currently, they got it. Mana Martinez minus 150. The comeback on Brandon Davis is plus 130. So I haven't moved in yet, but I'm just letting y'all know now that I will be betting Mana Martinez in this fight, and I'll let you know why. So I think Brandon Davis is a very tough guy. I think that he's a very respectable journeyman who, had a tough fight with Giga Chikadze, actually looked good in moments against Zabit even. And, we've given a lot of guys, even in fights he's lost, he's given them tough ass fights. But I think that we need to make a distinction here. Do you remember how I talk about this kid, Jordan Williams, how at 185 pounds and at 170 pounds, he's two completely different guys? At 185 pounds, this kid, Jordan Williams, knocked out RoboCop, had a gritty tooth and nail war with, what's the name of the French sniper? Nasruddin Imavov, right? Yeah. But then he drops to 170. He can't even take a punch. You know what I'm saying? Two different guys in two different weight classes. And I think to a lesser extreme version, Brandon Davis falls under that category, man. Brandon Davis has been dropped or rocked in every single fight he's had at bantamweight. The Randy Costa fight, he was getting shit kicked for at least, 5+ minutes in that fight, just getting wobbled all over the place. I was at that fight. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. Same night that Dustin fought Max, same night that Izzy fought Kelvin. Like, I was there. I was like, God damn. And I like Brandon Davis. Very cool guy. He's actually originally, I think, from Georgia. He comes by this area every once in a while. I like him a lot. But just keeping it real. At bantamweight, he's been hurt every single fight. So the Randy Costa fight, that's the first example. The fight against Kyung Ho Kang, he got dropped in the first round in that fight. The next fight against Dana Badgeri, I mean, he got blown out the water. And to take it a step further, now he's aging a little bit. Not that he's that old. I think he's only 33, but more so that the wars are catching up to him, and now he's got a torn ACL. In that fight, he's wearing this knee brace. Now he's had the surgery, and he's dropping back to 135 again, where I just think is not optimal for Brandon Davis. Can he make the weight? Yes. The guy runs or allegedly runs 20 miles every day. I definitely think he can make the weight. It's just, can he truly be at his optimal self at bantamweight? And I just don't think he can. I like his game, calf kicks, decent striker, experience. Like, I like Brandon Davis. I just think that here on the opposite side, you got this kid, Martinez, who's young, 25, 26 years old, and he hasn't even scratched the surface of his potential. If you watch this guy's regional fights, if you want to see some brutal, vicious knockouts, you watch Martinez's regional fights, and they're not just against bums. He's knocked out 2 guys on the regionals that are currently in the UFC. Remember that guy, Ricky Tercios, that pissed us all off that last fight? Martinez one punch knocked him out. You remember Jose Johnson? Is that his last name?
Yeah, Jose Johnson.
Jose Johnson, who just got a contract on Contender Series. Mana knocked him out in under a minute, and they're brutal out cold knockouts. So he comes into the UFC, and the Guido Canetti fight, I'd say it was a bit of an underwhelming performance for Mana standards, but if you put context into it, the week before, his longtime coach died. The kid misses weight by 5 pounds. It's a short notice opportunity. Like, I mean, when your coach and your mentor dies like a week before the fight and you still take the fight and you miss weight by 5 pounds, like, clearly he's not at 100%. And we didn't see the Mana we saw in the regionals, but let me tell you something. There were glimpses there. Some of those punches and bunches, some of those takedown attempts, I'm like, yo, give this kid a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more experience, and he's going to show you something in one of these fights. Like, you remember the kid Ziam that I bet on that last fight he had against Figlak? Like, Ziam had a little bit of a slow start to his UFC career too, but I said, just give this guy a little bit more time. He's young. These young kids need seasoning. They need experience. And I think now Martinez has paid those dues, had that tough fight with Guido, which I think you can make an argument for Mana winning that 3-0 before you can make an argument for Guido winning that 2-1. And the reason I say that is because it was a split decision, which I thought was ridiculous. I thought Mana clearly won the second and third, if not the first as well. And then the next fight against Ronnie's got that style I love, where Ronnie, he's going to attempt 14 takedowns in a fight. But usually when you're on the receiving end of that many takedowns, you're going to be huffing and puffing. You're going to be gassed out. And it's Martinez that lands 2 knockdowns in that third round, which goes to show this guy's not just a hard hitter. This guy's not some front runner. This guy's actually got serious heart. On his Contender Series fight where he got choked out, he didn't tap. He went to sleep. So I think this guy's got the heart of a lion. And should this fight go the 3-round distance, I think it's going to be Martinez who's digging deeper. I think it's going to be him who's still there in the second and the third round, putting it on the vet, Brandon Davis. But honestly, Wiz, what I really think is going to happen here is I think Martinez is going to show what I've seen for a long time on those regional fights. And I think he comes out here and gets his first UFC knockout against Davis, who has consistently been getting rocked in all of his bantamweight fights. And I think that trend continues here. We add another knockout loss after Dana Bakary, now in ACL surgery. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And not to mention, even when Brandon Davis was, in his prime at his best, he was still losing the majority of the UFC fights he was in. So I got Martinez via brutal, devastating, vicious knockout here. I think this is going to be his breakout performance. I think after this, people are going to be like, oh, so we got a new prospect in the bantamweight division. And I'm going to bet him straight at the minus 145, minus 150, I'm going to wait a little bit, see what the best line I can get is, and I'm going to pounce all over it.
Music to my ears. I already have a bet locked in on this fight because I expect the line to move against me. Dude, I expect it to be a 3-round kickboxing fight if it does last that much. And Martinez is just going to be able to out-volume him. He has that power advantage. That Ronnie Lawrence third round was one of the scariest bets I had, because I had Ronnie Lawrence in a parlay there, and I expected him just to wrestle him, but he gassed, and it was just horrible seeing those 2 knockdowns from Mana. Kid carries serious power, as we've seen on the regional scene. He can shut anyone's lights out. And in this case, Brandon Davis, I think he's just getting up there in age.
Brandon Davis.
Brandon Davis. My bad.
Shout out to my boy Ben the Bane Davis.
I had like a little bit of thing there. Yeah, Brandon Davis is just getting up there in age, and I don't think he's going to be able to take Martinez's punches all that much. I think he's going to get knocked out cold. Similar view to you, and I know Davis was never really we're never really close to being KO'd in previous fights, except for that Dana Gary fight. He's always just like putting on wars, but I don't see I don't see a way where he doesn't get KO'd here against someone. I think Mana is probably one of the hardest hitters he's faced in the UFC, and one of the youngest dudes he's faced. I think this is Mana's time to get the KO. So I expect him to win here. I got him for 2.1 units at -150. It should be an easy win for Mana here, as long as he follows his game plan. Because I'm not discrediting Brandon Davis here, but everything that Davis does, Mana does 2 times better. He has holes in his boxing where when he's going for that left hook, he just leaves his right arm down. I've noticed this in the tape over a couple of fights. His right arm's down. He doesn't defend it. And that's just a perfect counter opportunity for Mana with his just stiff jab right there. So I'm looking to see a lot of that too.
Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got another good prospect showdown. We got Nick Maximov. He's 8-1, taking on Jacob Mamba Malkoun, who is 6-2. Currently, they got it. Nick Maximov -150. The comeback on Jacob Malkoun is +130. I love both these guys. I mean, this is like I told you, I love my guys that can attempt 20 takedowns in a UFC fight. Don't get discouraged if the first few get stuffed. Just keep grinding and grinding and grinding. And that's exactly what both these guys bring to the table. I actually do have an opinion on who the better grappler is, and on if there's a KO or sub threat on either side. But let me hear what you got to say first.
Yeah, so I mean, Nick is going to have the tail of the tape advantages here. He's the taller and lengthier fighter by 3 inches in both departments. It's a wrestler versus wrestler matchup. I expect the fight to take place on the feet, though, to be honest. Whenever we see these kind of matchups where it's wrestler versus wrestler or striker versus striker, we see the opposite tend to happen historically. And I think Nick has the more technical striking and utilizes his kicks pretty well. And I think the tail of the tape advantages are going to serve him pretty well here against Malkoun. But, man, I really like Malkoun's performance against Brendan Allen. He really showed up there. And I think he won the fight. The wrong fighter won. Unfortunately, for me, I also had that decision line that a lot of people I know had, that plus 600 to 700 line. I had it at 650. I was disappointed. But, yeah, I think on the feet, Nick Maximov wins. On the ground, it's going to be really hard to tell, but I think Maximov is the more opportunistic submission threat. I'm staying away from the fight personally. I think it's going to be really fun to watch, but I'm going to predict Maximov to win by unanimous decision.
So we're going to pick the same winner, but I'm going to disagree on how the fight plays out. Because you did bring up a good point. Oftentimes when you get these 2 really good wrestlers, it turns into a striking match. And that's true. I can't debate that. You see that all the fucking time. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. And I think the proof is Nick Maximov's first 2 UFC opponents were also credentialed wrestlers. Cody Brundage, Punahele Soriano. I forget what Brundage's credentials are, but trust me when I tell you, he's a former college wrestler. And Punahele was like a D3 All-American. What was that?
I think Brundage is a D3 All-American as well.
Oh, so okay. So 2 D3 All-Americans, right? And Nick Maximov had 0 issues attempting and getting takedowns on both those guys. I think he hit 11 on Punahele, man. So like Nick Maximov doesn't give a shit who you are. And then the Andre Petrosky fight, I know he got caught, but he still tried to shoot on that guy too. So I don't think he cares, man. I think that's just his style, and he wants to prove that I can beat you at your own game. Like, oh, you think you're a better grappler than me? You know, he's got that 209 attitude, you know? I don't think so, right? Like, so I think he's going to want to try to prove that he's the better grappler. Here's the thing. Malkoun might not be the best athlete, might not be the biggest guy, might not have the most knockout power, might not be a submission threat, but like I respect the fuck out of Malkoun because he's just a dude that'll just bite down on that mouthpiece and work hard. I mean, when you look at his fight against Razak, you look at his fight against Dobson, like those guys, like if you want to know who's got a higher vertical jump, if you want to know who can bench press more, if who can power clean more, who probably had better numbers at the UFC PI in terms of their athleticism test. I mean, AJ Dobson and Razak probably trumped all over my boy Malkoun, but like when it came down to like biting down on that mouthpiece and showing more heart and just going for it, I mean, that's just something that money can't buy. That's something that the same way that Dobson and Razak are born with those athletic gifts. Malkoun's born with something in here, man. Like something about this kid's heart and his mind. It's just so strong. And I just respect it so much. So Malkoun has got my respect to the fullest. It's just that back to those opponents, Razak and Dobson, they're dangerous KO threats for sure, but out grappling them doesn't really tell me that you can out grapple an actual serious wrestler like Maximov. Whereas Maximov's fights where he did, the million takedowns in the fight, he did it against credentialed guys. Like he did it against legit wrestlers. That's where I'm like, yo, and he's still super young. So that's what makes it interesting. I think striking wise, I think Maximov's a bit sloppy there. I think he's a bit unproven there. But man, the kid's got brass balls, man. That fucking Contender Series fight, he weighed 210. His opponent weighed 265. And he grown man, that guy. Like, I like Maximov. It's just with his style, in the Petrosky fight, you can't sit here and say, oh, Maximov's a bum. I think that Maximov just got carried away, thinking I'm going to beat this guy at his own game. And Petrosky is no slouch of a grappler, especially in the early going while he's fresh, man. And even though the technique on that Anaconda didn't exactly look the prettiest, the squeeze that this dude Petrosky has, it didn't even matter if it was, if he went to the right side or this or that. Like that dude's squeeze is disgusting. I mean, he put him right to sleep. I don't think the submission threat is quite there for Malkoun. I don't think that the KO threat is there either. I just think it's going to be about who can grind more in this spot, and that's what makes it intriguing. So now back to the physical factors. You mentioned that Maximov's the bigger guy, the more athletic guy. I think that that'll actually matter here. It didn't matter that Dobson was more physical and athletic or that Razak was, because they don't have the grappling pedigree that Maximov has. And I think that's the fundamental difference. So when the fight first got announced, I thought it might be a dog or pass situation. And it might still be. It might still be because Maximov still has a lot to prove. But I'm leaning towards Maximov. Just stylistically, I think that even in the Brendan Allen fight, Malkoun definitely performed. And I will kind of disagree. Like, okay, did Brendan Allen cover his minus 315 price tag? No, he did not. But I still thought he kind of edged out the first and third. I mean, and he also was able to take down Malkoun. He was also able to get into full mount in that fight, which is like things that, I've never seen Maximov get taken down. I've seen him get submitted, but I've never seen him get taken down. I've never really seen him give up a bad position before. So that's kind of what makes this intriguing to me. So I think Maximov is just going to be a bit more physical. You can't count out that heart, that Mamba mentality, than just that work rate of Jacob Malkoun. You got to give him credit for it. But I think Maximov has the goods to win 2 of these 3 rounds. So I'm going to pick him for the win.
Can't disagree there. Can't disagree there at all.
Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Raphael Assuncao, he's 27-9, taking on Victor Henry, who is 22-5. Currently, they got a Victor Henry minus 325. The comeback on Raphael Assuncao is plus 270. The reason these odds are where they are for 2 reasons. Number one, unfortunately, my boy Raphael is at the tail end. And secondly, Victor just had that insane win. Like, you want to talk about numbers? Let me show you what these numbers say. I'm gonna pull them up real quick. Like when you talk about an insane pace, people were under the impression that Raoni Barcelos was declining, and that was not the case. Because one of the reasons I bet Barcelos this last fight against Trevin Jones is because the only tape I watched on Barcelos was his loss to Victor Henry, and that right there let me know he was going to beat Trevin Jones. Reason being is this: look at these fucking numbers, bro. Like this dude Victor Henry threw 397 strikes in a 3-round fight. I repeat, Victor Henry threw 397 strikes in a 3-round fight. Do you understand what kind of pace that is? So with Trevin Jones, who throws 3 strikes per round, I was like, oh my God. Like Raoni Barcelos threw more strikes in the individual rounds of the Victor Henry fight than Trevin Jones does in his whole fights combined. Do you understand what I'm saying here, man? Like, so that's why I was all over Barcelos there. The issue here is that I have to pay up fucking minus 325 on Victor. And a few years back, man, there was a time when Raphael Assuncao had a win over every single person in the top 15. Wins over Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font, like everybody, right? He literally beat the whole top 15 at one point. It's just now, getting close to 40 years old, getting knocked out by guys that aren't known for knocking people out, like Ricky Simone. It's pretty evident that Raphael Assuncao, who I love, he's represented my city, Atlanta, really, really well. And back in the day, I don't know if you know this. I'm sure you do. You're a hardcore fan. Rafa beat Jorge Masvidal.
Yep.
Back in the day, you understand? Like, this guy is a true OG, a true vet. It's just unfortunately he's past his prime. So I think that Victor Henry, his pace is insane, and I think there will come a time to fade Victor Henry. I can't lay this price, but I have to pick him just because I think my boy Rafa's on his way out. If you gave me Rafa a few years back, man, like I'd take those dog odds on Rafa, man, but I don't think he's got it anymore. So just give me Victor to just kind of just be ahead on the points, just outwork him. I mean, you threw 397 strikes against Barcelos. Like, let me see. But what's interesting is that Rafa had, like, in Rafa's prime, he had his way of slowing fights down and had a really insane counter striking game. So maybe he can slow the pace here if he can tap into his old self. It's just, I just think we're kind of past that point. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Victor in the spot.
Yeah, man. First of all, shout out to Victor Henry, hometown boy. He's like down the street. He lives down the street from me, so I'm
Where's
pretty
that?
familiar with his game. Fullerton, California.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, he works at a local bar. I'm there pretty often.
Shit, I'd hate to be the drunken patron that he has to escort.
Dude, he's done a couple things, just to say the least. But Rafa here is on a 4-fight losing streak, and like you said, he's getting up there in the age department, 40 years old, and his last string of fights have been hard to watch. Looked very slow, very sloppy, and it's just something that Victor Henry is going to be able to take advantage of. I don't think he's going to KO him, although he possibly could with the way that Assuncao has looked. But I just think he outpoints him, outvolumes him pretty easily to a unanimous decision victory. It's hard to see Assuncao go out and continuously go out and fight the way he's fighting. This might be the last one. Who knows? We're gonna have to see. But yeah, what a career this man has had. Beat everyone in the top 15 currently, like you said, and at one point was the who's who of the division.
Yeah, 100% about it. And it's just back to that talk, it's minus 325, which is what's, turning me off from the odds. But back to kind of like the Menifield versus Cirkunov talk. Is this my last chance to fade Raphael Assuncao? Right? Like that's the dilemma I'm having. Like, that's why I wish, like, man, couldn't you give me minus 250 or better, like, on this spot, and then give me like minus 150 on the other one, right? So that, it just sucks when you got to lay these big numbers, but they're big numbers for a reason. It's just, there's a good chance this is the last time we see Assuncao and the last time we see Cirkunov in the UFC. So despite it being that wide, maybe there's value. I'm just not sure if there is or not. That's why I'm having trouble pulling the trigger on those spots. But yeah. So next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Piera Rodriguez. She's 8-0. Where is she representing? She is representing Venezuela, and she's taking on Sam Hughes, who is 7-4. Currently, they got it. Piera Rodriguez minus 180. The comeback on Sam Hughes is plus 150. What's interesting, or 165, depending where you look. What's interesting is I was curious to see, where this opened up initially. just to see what Vegas was thinking. And dude, Vegas was actually thinking minus 230 Piera Rodriguez. So they were actually more confident on her than the public is. And here's my thing, man. With Sam Hughes, I actually do think that she's better than what she's shown. My issue with Sam Hughes is that sometimes there's a lot of hesitancy. Sometimes there's a lot of doesn't quite pull the trigger in there, doesn't quite live up to her potential. Because when she does let things go, I actually think that she's pretty skilled. I actually think that she like isn't bad at all. And you've seen these last few fights starting to get more comfortable in there, starting to put it together. It's just, you know, sometimes these old habits come out from time to time, whether it's inactivity in fights and this and that. And that's one of those things I don't like. I don't like betting on people that rarely throw, like a Trevin Jones. Like that's a guy that I like to fade every single fight. Yeah, you might have won a couple along the way, but long term, you're gonna make money fading guys like that, you know, with that Woodley style of just, you know, back yourself into the fence and barely throw anything at all. And I'm not saying that that's what Hughes does, but I'm saying early on in Hughes's run in the UFC, you know, she was just very gun shy in there. Let's pull up what these numbers said about her. Like, here's my point in case, brother. You know, so these last two fights, she's turned it up 100%. These last two, she's turned it up. But prior to that, you know, only 49 strikes landed in the Loma fight, in a 3-round fight. Like, she got doubled up in that spot. You know, the Tisha fight, 20 strikes. Like, you know, the Luana fight, 53 strikes. And this is a 3-round fight. Like, I need more output than that. I need better numbers than that. And here's the other thing about her opponent, Piera. Not saying that she's coming out here putting up big numbers either, but she's also kind of still. Firstly, does she train at King's MMA under Master Raphael Cordero by chance?
So there's two Kings MMAs. There's one that's run by Cordero, and then one that's run by Dariush, which is the
By
one that I
Benny?
go to.
Okay.
So I don't think so, but I haven't been to the second location as often, so I haven't seen her personally.
And you're at Cordero's or at Benny's?
No, I'm at Benny's.
Okay, so you haven't seen her at Benny's.
No, I haven't seen her at Benny's. I've been to Cordero's a couple of times, but haven't really seen anyone, to be honest. It's just probably wrong time.
Okay, so yeah, what I heard was that she was at Cordero's.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
this is tough. This is tough because it's like I don't know what to expect from Hughes. Sometimes gun shy. Last couple fights, kind of been a little. The confidence has been increasing a little bit more, and then with Piera, she's kind of one of these young fighters that still getting her feet wet and has shown, you know, some things I like here and there in these fights. Is just, you know, are we going to be seeing improvements fight by fight by fight? Is she kind of a finished product? I know she's young, but still, like, so I'm not really quite sure what to think. I was at her last fight against the OnlyFans model, and she treated her accordingly. Definitely won 2 of those rounds. Definitely grinded it out. And I've seen that in the Contender Series fight, she mixed it up on the feet really well. In the fight against the OnlyFans model, she was able to, you know, take it to the mat when she needed to. So I've seen a well-rounded approach. It's just, how do you kind of see this one? Like, are we seeing kind of a trajectory going up for Piera and Sam Hughes is kind of a finished product? Or do you think that Sam Hughes is finally starting to feel confident, finally starting to put it together? And of course, the odds. Are these odds wide? Are these odds correct? Like what are we thinking here, man?
So the thing with Sam Hughes, and this is gonna talk a lot about her last 2 fights. She finds a lot of success when she's fighting people who A, have bad takedown defense, and B, have no takedown competency at all. The Stella Nunes of the world, the Elise Reeds, who don't really go for takedowns. She finds a lot of success because her biggest threat is taking people down and hitting them with that ground and pound that we've seen in the past 2 fights. But then when she's facing other fighters that do have some competency and can keep the fight on the feet, she's just been. I mean, you've seen the takes on Twitter. People call her like no disrespect at all of this, but people call her the punching bag, and she just has very
Sorry, they call who the punching bag?
Sam Hughes.
Oh, right, yeah.
She's known for just not having the best striking defense at all. And when you're facing someone like Piera Rodriguez, A, she does have the takedown defense, and B, she does have a really good takedown game of her own. She likes to take the fights down to the mat and hit the ground and pound as well. So on the feet, this is probably going to stay on the feet if she's able to keep it on the feet. With Piera, though, she does have power. She has power in those hands, and if she's able to touch Sam Hughes up a couple of times with those power shots, the right hook, it's gonna be a long night for Sam Hughes here, and she's the more crisp boxer, Pierre Rodriguez, and I do expect her to win this matchup. But for minus 200, do I really want to take the risk? Probably not. I would rather take the minus 200 on Alonzo Menifield here. But yeah, I think Pierre Rodriguez wins by unanimous decision here. I think she's going to make it look pretty easy. But do I want to touch any of the lines? No, I'll probably wait to see what her decision line is personally.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. I do think that that's kind of where the edge is for Piera here, mixing in those takedowns. Sam Hughes was taken down, 7 times in her first 3 UFC fights, right? But to give her credit, she landed 6 takedowns the next 2. So it was pretty cool to see that she's kind of turned things around a little bit. So let's see if she keeps going on that upward trajectory, paid her dues those first few fights and now feeling more confident, or is Piera just simply a level above? That's what remains to be seen. And I'm not crazy about the price either with where they're both at in their respective careers. So I'll also pick Piera, but, not interested in betting this one. All right, so y'all, we got 2 more fights to talk about. So everyone, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. After this video is over, leave me a comment. Also follow my buddy Mahdi at WizBets. And also to the fans, I truly apologize about last week about those audio issues. It's a long ass story of why that happened. If I told you guys what happened, you'd be like, that's like the stupidest fucking thing ever. My boy Mahdi knows it. It's like sometimes technology doesn't make sense, but the good news is we fixed it. And I hope that clean sweep, those underdog bets on Yan Xiaonan, Daniel Santos, plus the sharp bets on Raoni Barcelos and Joaquim Silva made up for it. So thank y'all regardless for supporting me. And we're back to clear audio. So thank y'all again. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, follow my boy. And now let's break down these last 2 fights of the card. So in the flyweight division, we got CJ Vergara. We got Carlos Vergara. He's 10-3, taking on Tatsuro Taira, representing Japan, who was 11-0. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think he might be the only Japanese flyweight fighter currently on the UFC roster. So that's pretty cool. Currently, they got it. Tatsuro Taira minus 230. The comeback on CJ Vergara is plus 200. It actually opened minus 270, Tatsuro Taira. So that's the kind of regard that they hold him in. And I got to be honest with you, man. For a kid his age, which for those that don't know, he's only 22. He was born in the year 2000, guys. Like he's a baby. But man, like he's a big boy for the weight class for flyweight. He's 5'7". He's got the 70-inch reach. He's a flyweight that's got a longer reach than Max Holloway, who's one of the taller featherweights. Like this is a big boy, and he's an interesting cat, man. I like him a lot, and I think he's got a lot of potential. I just think it's one of those things where there will be some speed bumps along the way. It's just a matter of, is this going to be one of those? And what I love about this matchup is that this guy, CJ Vergara, is the perfect test for a prospect. CJ Vergara is one of these tough, gritty guys that, you start to gas out on a guy like CJ Vergara, kind of like his last opponent, Clayton Rodriguez, did. You start to take your foot off the gas. You start to, maybe try to coast a little bit. And this guy, CJ Vergara, as long as he hasn't gotten finished yet, which he did get submitted back in the day, and we will talk about the back takes of Tatsuro Taira, but if CJ Vergara hasn't gotten finished, like he's going to be there for all 3 rounds. And that's what a prospect like Taira needs to get to that next level if he can pass a test like this. So while I know that, the volume might not be on, on the higher side for Tatsuro Taira, I kind of feel like he makes his shots count, man. Like he's not exactly going to be a guy that like goes out there and lands over 100 significant strikes in a 3-round fight or this or that. But like when he does let his hands go, he's got a lot of power. He's got some big kicks, and he's opportunistic with everything he does. I feel like he's very calculated. He's a young kid. Young kids are prone to making mistakes. I really like this kid's back takes, and whether he's submitting his opponents or riding out top control, I mean, either one of those is going to win the fight. And when he does get taken down, he's attacking for submissions and he can get back up to his feet. So I think he's a very good prospect and someone to look out for. It's just like I said, when you're talking about his opponent, CJ Vergara, you're dealing with a battle-tested individual who can go out there and land 100 significant strikes in the fight, who can land knockdowns, who can get back up from takedowns, like who will fight you till the bitter end, as long as, you know, assuming he hasn't been finished. So I think this is the perfect test for Taira, and I think it's one he can pass. Honestly, just banking on, you know, no rookie mistakes, no rookie stunts. You know, don't be dominating the first round and a half and then have a big adrenaline dump and then get grinded out by this tough ass warrior Vergara who's going to be there. You know, especially let alone you start showing Vergara any kind of weakness and he's going to get right in your face and he's going to come after you. So that's what you have to look out for. And sometimes these young prospects need to take those learning lessons to get to that next level. I'm going to still go with Taira. You know, I'm not going to bet him at this price, but I think that this is a test he can pass as long as, you know, mentally he's with it, you know, as long as he's not dominating and then takes his foot off the gas, as long as, you know, he doesn't burn his arms out going for a submission attempt and then he's gassed out laying on his back and, you know, the vet Vergara is out here, you know, doing his thing. I mean, you saw, like I said, that third round against Ode Osborne. You saw the last two rounds against Clayton Rodriguez. Like, Vergara don't play no games, man. But when you're talking about who's more talented, who's more athletic, who's got the, you know, the higher ceiling, I do think it's Taira. And for those reasons, I'm going to pick him to win this fight.
Yeah, I echo a lot of the same sentiments here. Taira's a taller and lengthier fighter. He's going to have the speed advantage over Vergara. And I still think he's going to be the one throwing more volume. But for Taira, his bread and butter is those takedowns. When he lands those takedowns, he's able to transition. And Dan, you know this, you're a jiu-jitsu guy like myself. The way he transitions and tries to go and pass through guards, it's really high level for a dude that young. And I just see him dominating this fight on the mat. And Vergara has been able to get some takedowns of his own, but his one flaw is he's always getting reversed. Against Clayton, he was getting reversed left and right. And against someone like Taira, who himself is someone that's looking for these submissions in these exchanges, I think he's able to lock one up here and end the fight by sub. It's either going to be a sub or unanimous decision victory for me. I don't think he knocks him out. But yeah, I'm siding with Taira here. I'm not going to be laying any money on this fight, but it'll be a fun one to watch, that's for sure, and a good test for Taira.
And last but not least, kicking off the card, man, we got in the welterweight division, we got Pete Rodriguez. He's 4-1, taking on Mike Jackson, who is 1-1. It's funny, isn't he like 2-1, or do they not even count the CM Punk fight anymore?
I don't think they count the CM Punk fight anymore.
Wow, that's an exhibition match now. That's funny. Currently, they got it Pete Rodriguez minus 660. The comeback on Mike Jackson's plus 490. I know that last fight with Mike Jackson and Dean Barry, like Dean Barry was like literally like one of the biggest frauds I've ever seen in all my years watching this sport. And Dean Barry was still like whooping him. It was ugly as hell, but you know, he fouled him, and Mike Jackson, you know, he found his way to win and he got his second paycheck. I never thought I'd see the day where Mike Jackson won 2 UFC fights, right? Even though those were not even NFC main event level fights at all. I mean, NFC main event on the next one is Jared Gooden versus Doug Usher, right? Like, could you imagine putting Mike Jackson and you know this other dude in an NFC main event? And like P. Rodriguez, look, he's green, you know, but at least like he's been in there with one real guy. I mean, he stood and banged with Jack Della Maddalena. He got knocked out, of course. I mean, what do you think would happen if Mike Jackson fought Jack Della Maddalena? But prior to that, you know, at least like P. Rodriguez beat, you know, at least he had like a nice little regional run where he knocked out a 5-1 guy, you know, he knocked out a 1-0 guy, which is like a joke for UFC standards. But like when you're talking about Mike Jackson, those are the kind of opponents that Mike Jackson is. So yeah, I definitely got to go Pete Rodriguez. I'm just, you know, I don't like laying prices like this on, you know, unproven guys, even though he's probably going to win this. It's just very, very low level fight. But I think at least Pete Rodriguez is a real fighter, despite being green, despite not having any experience, despite probably being in the UFC way too early. At least he's a real fighter. Whereas I think Jackson's a photographer that got lucky, hit the jackpot, to put it lightly. So I'm just glad that this is the last time, hopefully, that we're going to see Jackson inside the UFC's octagon. So give me Pete Rodriguez to knock this fool out.
Yeah, Pete Rodriguez, round 1 knockout. He's the much more powerful striker, and I kind of like his trip game. He has some nice little trips that he's able to get some takedowns with. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to take it to the floor and just ground and pound him out of there. But yeah, I lost some life taping the Mike Jackson fights.
Wow, you actually taped them. I just looked at the stats and memory, and that was enough for me. So respect.
Lost some years off my life, that's for sure.
Well, Mahdi, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here, right now on Half the Battle. Before we get out of here, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, my man, for UFC Vegas 62, in your opinion, what is the fight to watch?
I'm gonna have to go with the Maximov Malkoun fight. I'm a person who's a geek over wrestling, and if this does end up on the mat, I'm gonna love every bit of it. Just going through those transitions. And fighter to watch for me is actually gonna be Brandon Royval. I think he's able to make this fight really exciting, and with his flashy style, he might be able to pull something off here.
Yeah, I mean, how can Brandon Royval not be your fighter to watch? For me, the fight to watch is Cub Swanson versus Jonathan Martinez. I mean, Jonathan Martinez, a guy who's really been paying his dues inside the UFC octagon, kind of starting to feel like the UFC is his home. And now they're giving him that big name test against a legend of the sport and Cub Swanson, a guy who has one of his fights in the Hall of Fame, a guy that I grew up watching in the WEC. And what makes it even more intriguing, not just that it's the up and comer versus the vet, it's that the vet is dropping to 135 pounds after having his entire career at 145. Like, what's he gonna look like? I have no idea. And to take it a step further, the weakness Martinez has had, is Cub Swanson's strength. That big boxing of Cub Swanson. Martinez kind of stands upright, but on the flip side, Martinez with those big knees, those big kicks, man, I love this matchup. So Martinez versus Cub Swanson is my fight to watch. And my fighter to watch is Mana Martinez, man. Like, listen, when I watched this guy's regional fights, when he first came in the UFC, I was like, holy shit, we have a new knockout artist in the bantamweight division. But he's only, at the time, 23, 24, just a kid. Give him a little seasoning, give him a little experience, let him feel comfortable inside the octagon. And I think that this is the perfect matchup for him to come out here, impress a lot of people, and show them what a lot of us have been talking about and why we've hyped this guy up. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do Saturday night. Those are my expectations, at least. So for that reason, Mana Martinez is my fighter to watch. So, Mahdi, I truly appreciate you joining me right here, right now on Half the Battle. The fans can follow you at WizBets. That's with 2 Z's. Also, for all the fans watching, thank you guys again. Sorry about last week, but I hope we made it up with the clean sweep, plus getting back to normal today. So far, I've bet Dusko. I bet D-Rod. 100% going to bet Mana. And on the fence about VV, I'm not quite sure. But those 3 that I mentioned are already, I'm 100% set on in terms of that. I've already bet 2 of them, and I'm going to bet the other one, period. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. So subscribe to Half the Battle everywhere podcasts are found. I'd say I'd be back next week, but I already broke down the card for next week. So, maybe we'll do something special. Maybe we can make this a tradition and do an early preview for UFC 280. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But regardless, I was happy to get this out early for y'all. Also, thanks to my guest as well. Thank you to all the fans watching. Like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment afterwards. All those little things y'all do help the show grow tremendously. And then feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Best Fight Picks. So I only get notifications from people that I follow. So if you've been like sending me stuff and I haven't responded, that's not because I'm ignoring you. You can always slide into my DMs, which are open, and I'm happy to respond to almost anything on there. So thank y'all again for everything. Enjoy the weekend. Go Braves. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.